come up and accept this
On
award.
October 15th, representatives of El Salvador's National Coalition Against Mining, known as La Mesa, were in Washington, D.C. to receive the Letelier Moffitt International Human Rights Award.
La mesa la integran comunidades de la zona norte del país, especialmente de los departamentos de Cabañas y Chalatenango, y organizaciones ecologistas, de derechos humanos, religiosas, de desarrollo local y centros de investigación.
As of today, no mining exploitation permits have been awarded in El Salvador, and La Mesa representative Vidalina Morales claimed this as a victory of the social movement.
Cuyo logro principal es la decisión gubernamental de no permitir esta nociva industria, a pesar de las fuertes presiones de empresas como la canadiense Pacific Rim y la estadounidense Commerce Group, que han demandado al país ante el Centro Internacional de Arreglo de Diferencias sobre Inversiones CIADI por negarle las licencias de explotación.
The court in question, known as the ICSID, is an arm of the World Bank that hears cases brought forward by corporations against governments. The case of Pacific Rim Mining Corporation is particularly interesting. The company alleges that the Salvadoran government's decision not to grant a mining permit is in violation of the Central American Free Trade Agreement, known as CAFTA. The catch is that Pacific Rim, along with over 60% of the world's mining corporations, is based in Canada, and Canada is not a party to CAFTA. So, Pacific Rim is breaking new ground by filing the suit through a subsidiary based in Nevada. They are asking for $100 million in damages. The Real News spoke to Tom Shrake, CEO and president of Pacific Rim.
You know, there's only so much that I'm allowed to say. Obviously, my hands are somewhat tied by the lawsuit itself. But the basic premise of the case is that El Salvador has mining laws, it has investment laws, it has environmental laws, and we've followed all those laws, and we still don't have a permit. So that's basically the basis of the CAFTA arbitration case.
The country still has the right to deny a permit, even if you follow best practices.
Under their law, they have the right to deny the permit if there's a reason to deny the permit.
Okay, so the argument is there hasn't been a reason to deny the permit.
Correct.
Activists in El Salvador provide a number of reasons for denying the permit, including the demonstrated effects on water supply and contamination that other communities around the world have experienced from gold mining. El Salvador is reportedly tied with Haiti for the least access to potable water in the Western Hemisphere, and the little water that they do have is already contaminated. A recent report from the World Economic Forum states that only 1/3 of the country's water is healthy enough to drink. Opponents to the mine say this water crisis demonstrates why El Salvador cannot experiment with an industry that has contaminated and dried up water sources around the world. Pacific Rim claims that their mine will be an industry leader with no negative effects on the environment or public health. But Salvadoran activists say that they have never been shown an example of this benign form of gold mining in action.
There are very few operations in the world that go to the length that we've proposed in our proposed design to the government of El Salvador. The combination of double lining the tailings pond, destroying cyanide, and putting a water treatment plant downstream for any kind of any waters that are released from the tailings facility. There's only one mine in the world that I know of that has gone to those lengths, and that's Kubal in Russia.
The Kupol mine, operated by another Canadian gold miner, Kinross, is located in the northeastern tip of Siberia. According to a recent Reuters article, the mine is only accessible in winter by way of, quote, an ice road laid across 250 miles of tundra to carry supplies to one of the world's most isolated gold mines. By contrast, Pacific Rim's mine site is surrounded on all sides by rural communities, and just a few miles down the highway from the town of San Isidro, leading activists to demand a more representative example. Opponents also challenge the company on its insistence that mining will help to address widespread poverty in El Salvador, and their skepticism is supported by studies from groups like Oxfam.
Since we're a development organization, we approach mining from the perspective of development. The question for us is, does mining contribute or not to sustainable development? And we find that it does not. The experience that we've had demonstrates is that far from generating economic boom, sustainable development at the local level for communities around mining projects, that mining endeavors throughout the developing world tend to generate deeper levels of poverty.
The reality is that 80% of all the in-situ value of the metal in the ground on average on a worldwide basis will stay in El Salvador. The idea that we're, out there basically playing the part of the conquistadors and robbing the country of its gold is just patently ridiculous. Any natural resource industry in any country in the world, they're going in, they have a business, there's a cost to produce whatever it is they're producing, and they're going to make a profit. That's, otherwise they wouldn't be there. But the idea that it's just going to rape and pillage the countryside economically is just nonsense.
Members of La Mesa say that this 80% figure is contradicted by Pacific Rim's own forecasts.
Lo que quiere es el oro porque ahora está a más de $1,000 la onza. Pero ellos, abusando sin pagar agua y también dándonos un salario mendigo, el costo, según el estudio de impacto ambiental, producir una onza nada más les va a costar $163. ¿Cómo no van a estar con los grandes ojos así viendo las ganancias que van a tener? Que aquí en El Salvador se deben de buscar otras alternativas para generar desarrollo en las comunidades. Si ahí es necesario luchar para que se quite el CAFTA, hay que luchar.
For La Mesa, protecting the water supply is the most important feature of any future development, a belief shared by the World Economic Forum, who just last week painted a dire picture of the country's water crisis. Their analyst was quoted in the Salvadoran national daily, La Prensa Gráfica, as saying that 5 years from now, neither foreign nor local investors can be certain that they will enjoy access to the necessary quality or quantity of water, adding that there can be no economic growth without quality water. Interestingly, it is the same goal of attracting investment that is the justification for allowing corporations like Pacific Rim to sue governments like El Salvador under free trade agreements like CAFTA, allowing companies to invest in the understanding that should their projects be rejected, they can always try and recoup both their costs and in some cases their projected profits as well.
Siempre nos opusimos que no debían de firmarse esos tratados de libre comercio. Por desgracia, en El Salvador, los gobiernos que han estado anteriormente han sido a favor del gran capital y no escucharon que este tratado de libre comercio nos iba a llevar hasta esto, donde sobrepasa incluso sobre nuestra constitución política. Ante la soberanía de nuestro país, incluso se quieren imponer ante la decisión del pueblo, donde hemos dicho a través de encuestas más del 62% diciendo no a la explotación minera.
The poll in question was carried out in late 2007 by the Jesuit University of Central America.
8 de cada 10 no sabía que en su localidad, que en su municipio se iba a realizar un proyecto minero. En ese sentido, la gente, no se le ha consultado a la gente, mire, se ha pedido esta solicitud para este municipio, como comunidad, ¿estamos de acuerdo?
But Shrake claims that mining is actually supported by the people of El Salvador, and that the government has neglected their will.
The last poll that we did, which was in August of 2008, shows that only about 1 out of 4 people in El Salvador are opposed to mining.
This goes against some of the polling that's been done by the Jesuit University.
Right.
Which shows pretty much diametrically opposed numbers.
Right.
How should people look at that?
Well, I guess they have 2 sources of information. They have to decide which they trust.
Recent months have put Pacific Rim at the center of a string of tragedies against anti-mining activists in Cabañas, including the torture and assassination of anti-mining leader Marcelo Rivera. The authorities in El Salvador have labeled the crime as a case of common gang violence and detained 5 gang members. Marcelo's brother, Miguel, vehemently disagrees.
Marcelo era el director de la Casa de la Cultura del municipio donde está ubicado el proyecto insignia de minería en El Salvador, que es el proyecto El Dorado, abanderado por Pacific Rim. Era el director de la organización local que estaba haciendo incidencia e informando a la población de los verdaderos efectos y lo que significa la minería y la violación a los derechos humanos que esto significa. Pero también Marcelo era miembro de la departamental del FMLN en Cabañas. A diferencia de los que andamos aquí quizás, que solo estamos en el movimiento social. Era como esa pieza que engranaba y comunicaba al movimiento con el partido. De ahí vemos la importancia de decidir a quién entonces ejemplarizar para querer bajar el movimiento. Creemos que detrás de esto no es una simple cuestión de cómo delincuencia común como la Fiscalía quiere hacer ver.
There's no reason why we participate in that kind of activity. Any murder in El Salvador is a tragedy. Any death, unnecessary death, is a tragedy, and there's far too much of it in El Salvador. There's far too much violence. We don't condone violence in any shape, way, or form. We actually go out of our way to train our employees to turn the other cheek in the event of confrontation in the mining debate. We basically ask that they use Mahatma Gandhi as an example of how to conduct themselves. And
so far, neither the Salvadoran Attorney General nor the National Police have heeded calls for a thorough investigation of Marcelo's assassination and other acts of violence against anti-mining activists.
La mesa dedica este premio a los defensores del medio ambiente y los derechos humanos que sufren amenazas, persecución, agresiones y asesinatos debido a su resistencia a la minería metálica, especialmente a Gustavo Marcelo Rivera.
Until such time as an investigation clears the company's name, La Mesa has placed the blame on the company.
Pacific Rim, además de incumplir requisitos ambientales y violentar leyes, sus exploraciones causaron daños ecológicos, pérdidas económicas, conflictos sociales y corrupción. Es decir, agredió al país y, por tanto, debe ser enjuiciada. Pero no, la empresa demanda al Estado. Se invierten los roles. El victimario, Pacific Rim, demanda a la víctima El Salvador. El escritor uruguayo Eduardo Galeano tiene en esta demanda otro ejemplo para ilustrar mejor el mundo patas arriba.
The current government of El Salvador has committed to a temporary moratorium on mining licenses, but La Mesa continues to push for a new law to permanently prohibit metallic mining in the country. Meanwhile, the tribunal on the lawsuit is just getting started, and both sides appear confident.
We are relying on the law, both locally in El Salvador and international treaty, to resolve this dispute. And what I would ask is that people let the law do the job that it was designed to do. The rule of law is the best hope for El Salvador to establish a long-term economy, and we have faith in the rule of law here, and we have faith in the international treaties which protect us, and unfortunately we've had to resort to that. But we look forward to a day when we're building a responsible mining industry in El Salvador, and both the company and all Salvadorans are benefiting from that industry.
Pero nosotros sabemos que así como lo hemos derrotado en nuestras comunidades, en el Cerro del Limón, donde se les han bajado las máquinas a las empresas mineras, y se les ha dicho no los queremos volver a ver aquí, porque aquí somos donde vivimos los salvadoreños. Así los vamos a sacar del país, y así vamos a luchar ante el CIADE también.